Do you know why?
So, I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Would she be sure, folks? If she knew why, would she be sure? Yeah, she would be sure. So, what do those two things have to do with one another, folks? If you put Mentos in Diet Cola, what happens?
Explodes.
They do fountains with it.
But then would you not have to put it on each thing? Don't put Mentos in.
Well, my question is, if you eat a bunch of Mentos and then you decide to wash it down with Diet Cola, do you explode at both ends or just one? And here's the more important question that's more relevant to this class. If 2/3 of my class knows about this, do you think that Cola and Mentos know about it?
Yes.
And I just want you to imagine, because apparently that stomach thing doesn't work, because Mythbusters prove that. But what if you've got, you decide to fill up your mouth with Mentos and you're driving, okay? You're driving along, and you got your mouth full of Mentos, and then you grab your Diet Cola and through a straw, what's going to happen? All over and would a reasonable person, the physician foresee that if they don't warn about the danger of Diet Cola and Mentos, both of them, someone could get hurt? What would a reasonable Mentos or Diet Cola manufacturer do? Court has already ruled on this. They would warn of a known danger, right? They failed to act reasonably. Was there harm? Yeah. Johnny lost control of his car, and he went flying into a poor kid that was about to hoof a dog and hit a bus shelter and wiped out these people. And if you had warned him, would he still have drank in it? What's the answer most likely to be? It's hard to prove that one sometimes.
Yes.
What? Probably, well, he might not have. And so, bang, you got negligence. And I do not know why. At least Mentos doesn't put that warning on there. It's, to me, a lawsuit waiting to happen. I think it's like obvious. It's an obvious lawsuit. Go ahead.
During the Prohibition, grape juice makers put a warning on their product: do not let this product sit for 3 weeks or else it'll create alcohol.
Yeah.
So, like, what is that?
Where's the harm? That was just advertising. Right? That was just advertising, clever advertising. Don't let this turn into liquor, because you can't get liquor.
Would that be like why they put the please drink responsibly and no the car with the cross through on beer cans?
Possibly. To me, again, you don't have to warn about obvious. And to me, getting drunk could be as obvious dangers. I think that's more of a political statement than it is a legal statement.
Well, but the cigarette, the old smoke killed cigarette.
That was one of the things, right? Cigarettes. Did they warn you of the known danger?
What?
No, in the 60s. It was just Johnny Cool, right? Well, the Marlboro Man. You could be the Marlboro Man. You just got to smoke these cigarettes, right? And they didn't warn you of known danger. And they knew, right? That's a huge lawsuit. Where they knew that there was serious health things, and they didn't warn people. In fact, they promoted it. In fact, they hid it, right? And then they ended up being sued for a lot. Okay, you understand that, folks? That's the law. Professional liability is just the final thing. It isn't a tort. It deals with negligence. It basically says, goes back to this person, mostly. In the position of the defendant, we do look at who the person is. If they're a professional, they will know stuff that other people may not know. And when it comes to being reasonable, we require them to be a reasonable professional. They should have the standard and skill of a reasonable, normal, average doctor. They don't have to be the best, but they can't be the worst. Would a reasonable doctor prescribe that? Would a reasonable doctor make that mistake? And that becomes, like, so professionals can be sued, and it's not any different, but we do consider who they are and what a reasonable person like them would have known and what they would have done. And that's all that professional liability is. Okay. Have I missed anything? What I want to do now is go to the case study. I want to go back to negligence, and the only reason is that negligence is really hard to write out. So because it's hard to write out, it takes a while. I did this before class because I have a cold and I don't want to be here any longer. You know, I've got that draggy thing. Class has actually energized me until I'm done, and then you just sort of fall like a thing. So I think I'm going to hit the, I'm going to fall over a cliff once I finish tonight. So I wanted to make sure that we're spending as little time as we can watching me write, okay? So I got this stuff up on the board. So I want to show you how this works. And this is going to be the case for everything. And part of what I'm trying to show you is how do you answer a negligence question properly? And one of the things I want to show you is there are words up here that need to be here, right? So we haven't even picked an action. And I've got negligence basically drawn out here. It's almost all done, right? So if we go to the fact situation of that angry blowfish, can you give me a choice that might be negligent? There are several.
Serving spoiled food.
So there's the serving of the bad food, right? Where obviously they weren't careful in the kitchen because the food was unedible. So let's just walk through that one. I'm going to show you what this would be. Okay. Would a reasonable person in the position of offense foresee that if they don't take proper care with food, because that's implicit in what happened there, right? Somebody could get harmed. What would a reasonable person do? Or sorry, could you foresee it? Everyone knows that bacteria grows on food, and if it's not properly cared for, it can be put into food, and people would eat it, and they get sick. So it's foreseeable that if you do not take proper care of food, somebody could be harmed. I was asked this question before class. I'm going to answer it now. With negligence, and pretty much every tort, I asked you to pick a choice. You must, I tell you, I don't say look for a tort. I say look for an action. Tell me what tort that is. And that is because each separate action is dealt with individually. So, and students will sometimes start with one action and they end with something else. You can't do that. Okay? So, if we go back to the serving people food like that, everyone knows that if bacteria is there, so it is foreseeable that if you don't take proper care in serving food or preparing food, someone could get hurt. What would a reasonable person have done given the risk? The risk is what you identified in one, that people could get sick. Given that risk, what would reasonable people do, folks?
Take better care or serve.
They would take proper care. Did the restaurant in this case? Did they take proper care?
No.
How do you know? Because the food was bad, right? Was there harm?
No.
So no one got hurt? Okay.
Right?
Then it's impossible to deal with element number 4 because you have to show that the choice, which is serving bad food, caused the harm. There was no harm. So it didn't cause it. There was no harm. You would still go on and deal with any other issues, any defenses that could reasonably argue. if you're told, I don't think you get to voluntary assumption of risk. It was virtually certain he was going to get sick and he accepted the risk. I don't think you get there. Contributory negligence? Would it be negligent to eat that food after being told it was probably poison?
He was,
Go ahead.
I mean, like, both he was sick and the text says he thought it was a joke. He thought it was Western
Was he?
a greeting.
Was he sick?
Yeah, he had a cold.
Did he get it from the food?
No.
Okay, no. So there wasn't any harm that was caused by that thing. You would not find negligence, but you would still deal with the defenses. You say, there is not, and if there was, he would have the defense of contributory negligence. Right? That's what you would do in that case. Okay, another choice.
Alex being drunk.
So,
Operating a boat.
yes, being drunk is not the choice that was the problem, right? So I'm going to walk this one through. I'm going to show you this one, okay? So, I don't think it's going to be negligent just for an ordinary person to be drunk, okay? If I want to go home and drink my good scotch, never get drunk on scotch, folks. It's a rule of life, okay? Just do not do it. It's the worst. Okay. So, if we choose this one, this is the one I want to walk you through. The way you would write this out would still start like this. Would a reasonable person in the position of the offender foresee that if they, and then you put this right there. That would be element, the first of the elements for negligence, properly described based on that issue. So this is the element. This is actually the analysis. And with negligence, I don't care which way you do it. You can do this, then this, then this, then that, and then do the analysis. But there is a sequence here. So sometimes people find it easier to ask the question and answer the question. So you're basically doing steps 2 and 3, walking your way through each element. It's not wrong. It works sometimes for negligence because this is the risk that is foreseeable. That's the choice based on this risk. So how would you answer this? This is the one that people have the biggest problem with. What does everyone know? That when you're drunk, what? That's too fast. There's no... Because you got to make the connection. Everyone knows that when you're drunk, what happens when you're drunk?
Your reflexes and cognitive ability are diminished.
Yeah. Is that true, folks? Everyone knows that? You don't? I'm going to call it motor skills. Right? The ability to move. Then the next thing you'll say is something like this. There isn't a right way to do this. There isn't one right answer. But you've got to show a connection between how this would be foreseeable. So you would say, and a boat, operating a boat, requires what? Motor skills and maybe cognitive ability. If you don't have them, right? If they're impaired, what can happen?
Harm?
How? Does it just drop down from the sky? How, folks? Where's the connection? What would happen if you're drunk and operating a boat?
Was it operated improperly?
Okay, how does the harm happen? Okay, so if impaired, you could lose control and crash. And people could be harmed. And then you're going to summarize this. It's already there. So, it is foreseeable that if you operate the boat drunk, somebody could be harmed. I need to see that you understand that that is the question that you are answering here. There is several ways to do it. I don't mark the quality of how well you've done this. What I mark is, have you connected and shown how your brain has come to the conclusion that it's foreseeable that someone could get harmed. And it's based on this. A reasonable person, that's the idea of everyone knows this causes this, this causes this, this causes this, and that can cause that. Therefore, it's foreseeable that someone could get harmed. Okay? So, it's foreseeable someone could get harmed. They could crash the boat because they're drunk. I'm going to give you an opportunity, folks, if you want to write this out or to take a full picture of this when I have it done. So what would a reasonable person have done?
Not drink.
Not trying to vote, drunk.
Not driven the boat drunk. So this is the element. This is the second element to negligence. This is actually step 3, which is doing the analysis of that element, right? So this is these parts are that is step 2, that is step 2, that is step 2, that is step 2. This is actually step 3. This is step 3 of the elements, right? Because the process is identify the action that could be a tort. That's there. That's step number 1. Write out the elements. That's here, here. Sorry, here, 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 and here. Those are the 4 elements for negligence. And then you do analysis. That is here, 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 and it's going to be here. Why do you have that quizzical expression? Just do this, okay, if you got a negligence question. With the intentional torts, folks, you'll write the elements out first, all of them, then you'll do the analysis. With negligence, you can do that, or you can interleaf them, 2 and 3. That's all I'm telling you here. Okay? And I'm doing the interleaf way. So, they would not drive the boat. Since the defendant did not do this, she did drive it drunk, she failed to act reasonably. Was there harm? Who got harmed, first of all?
Bob. And Alex.
But who's being sued?
Alex.
That sometimes, it should be obvious, but sometimes students do lose sight of that, right? We're talking about Bob. So the harm is going to have to be whose?
Bob's harm.
Okay, what harm did Bob suffer?
He lost his leg.
Okay, okay. So, stop for a minute. You're going to define what harm is here. So, your answer is going to be, was there harm? And here's your answer. That's your question, here's your answer. Harm means physical, financial, property, or emotional loss. In this case, there was Bob lost leg. What else?
His general health, he had to quit his job.
Lost his job. Anything else? Yeah, he had breathing issues. Anything else?
He was traumatized, probably.
Yeah, I would suspect there was trauma. So the trauma would be emotional harm. The losing of the leg and the breathing issues would be physical harm. And the losing of the job would be financial harm. So any one of those, you only need one to prove negligence, but there's all 4 are proved there. Got it? It's the failing to act reasonably, driving the boat drunk, the reason that these happened. What?
Would, In this case, when there's 3 different types of negligence, would those be 3 different cases, or would they all, like, would he sue them for like financial, physical, and emotional loss all together, or?
Again, this is a little bit of a tricky question to answer. I'm going to try to make sure that you've understood what I said, okay? This is the action you're suing for. You only sue for one action at a time. So, when you're dealing with harm, those are not 3 negligences. That is one negligence. That's one choice. Negligence is a choice. It's a choice in what people do, what they don't do, what they say, what they don't say. It's a choice. So that's the one choice that is negligence. However, it led to, or there was in the fact, 4 harms that we've identified here.
But you only have to prove one.
You do. And why that's important is because there may be a situation in which that wasn't part of this, that wasn't, but this one was, right? So when that happens, you got to kind of explain things a little bit better, but the question is, was there harm? And these are all right answers to this. Where it can come up is when we deal with causation. Because maybe 2 of them were caused by something else, and 2 of them were caused by that choice. And you're going to say that these 2 were caused by the choice. That's enough to prove the negligence. And that will impact on what he can sue for if there were only 2. Right? Because he can sue for the negligence and that loss. Right? You got it?
Yep.
Okay. So, let's first of all deal with what the answer is to this question. Was the failure to act reasonably the proximate cause of that harm? Yes or no? What's the answer?
Yes.
How?
If Alex wasn't drunk, she would have driven the boat reasonably, and Bob would not have been knocked overboard.
So, did he fall overboard because of the way she was driving?
No. Not even arguably? Like, I get there was a storm, but like she was drunk. Like,
She wasn't driving at the time that he fell over.
yeah, she was.
Doesn't matter.
Sorry.
Yeah, wait a minute. Facts do matter here, but what caused Bob to fall overboard? Was it the driving?
And he was tied up.
He wasn't tied up at that point.
He just got
Okay, he's broken free.
He
Right?
lose the
It
balance.
was a storm hit.
Did her being drunk cause the storm?
What caused her to be there?
That's not the same issue. You jump towards. Because is her driving the boat drunk the reason why the wave hit? Her being out there isn't this. It's a different choice. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But this was a dirty little tort, folks. That's why we're doing it, okay? Dirty little nasty tort. Because your human emotions are going to push you to say, the rat bastard should not have been out there drunk. And that's true, right? We all agree with that. Should is a terrible word in this course. It's a bad, bad word. When I see it on an exam, I normally will circle it and put an X there. It's almost always a wrong answer. We don't deal with should. Should is a land that does not exist, right? So, should you have more money? Doesn't matter what you think you should or shouldn't have, right? Should you be happier? You know, should my wife be, whatever, right? Should is a world that does not exist. And you can't pull that in. It's not a fact that things should be this way. It's not a law. Laws are not should, right? Should is your opinion of a world that doesn't exist. And it doesn't work in any part of this process. There's law, bang. It's not what the law should be, it's what the law is. I don't care what you like the law or don't like the law, right? You guys, well, that shouldn't be the law. That's stupid, right? Because it doesn't matter what you think. You say, well, this fact should not be there. It is. Get over it, right? So Should is not a part that exists. And you have a tendency in your thing to say, she's got to be the one who's at fault here because, and she might be, it's just not for that. Because this has to connect to that for there to be negligence. And there would have to be facts to support it. So if it was like this, here's what the facts would look like to make the connection, but they would have to be there. A wall of water came in. Alex tried to avoid it, but because she was drunk, she turned the wheel the wrong way and Bob fell over. Then you got the facts. But here you've got that she was, nothing in the facts say that because that, it was a wave that hit. And when a wave hit, drunk or sober? Would it? Can a wave hit you when you're sober in a boat?
Yes.
Can they hit when you're drunk in a boat?
Yes.
Can they cause you to capsize or knock you over if you're drunk in a boat? Or sober in a boat? So, I don't think that there's a connection here. Which is dirty. Because we want there to be one, don't we? That's kind of a lesson. And don't let your emotions become the basis for your analysis. They have no room. Yeah.
So I don't know if I missed.
Oh, yeah, you did.
I missed a couple minutes.
That's
But there's a few different routes for the negligence,
there is.
correct? Okay, because the action I did was the casting the fish hook.
Yes.
And it's snagging him in the butt.
Yes.
That's another route you can take too.
For a different thing, but the damages are different, right? He didn't get the breathing because of that.
Yeah, no. it was
Right?
the
Right?
Infection and all that.
He did. Right? Hold it for a minute, because even though you're right, and even though we kind of dealt with it, I'm going to come back and deal with this again. Okay? I'm going to deal with that point separately. So, wait a minute, folks. You don't stop the process because one of the elements is improved. Remember I talked to you about that? Why not? Why don't you stop? You know the answer. You don't stop. Why not?
Demonstrating that the element is not present is also demonstrating that we understand the concept.
Yeah, and there could be marks here. And if you don't go there, there's no marks. And if you're wrong, that's an unsupportable answer, that's what I mean, and you stop there, well, you're going to lose marks because you're wrong, and you're going to lose marks because you never dealt with what you should have, which is on further along. You always finish the process. So, I don't think this element is here for that choice, okay, just for that one, and we still deal with it. So, negligence is, what would you put here? Proved or not proved?
No.
Okay, this is step number 4. So if you agree with my analysis there, it's not proved. The following defenses can reasonably be argued. What could reasonably be argued? If that tort was proved, what defenses could Alex use?
Contributory negligence.
Absolutely. He knew she was drunk. You can't use voluntary assumption of risk. It's such a hard thing to prove. You would have to prove that it was virtually inevitable that he was going to get hurt, and he knew that. How do you know why can't you get to that level? What facts show that he couldn't know it was virtually inevitable he was going to get hurt? There's one important fact. That means you will never get to voluntary assumption of risk. There's something more than that, though. You have to prove he knew it was virtually inevitable that he was going to get hurt, and he said that's okay. How do you know that he couldn't know that?
Because he didn't even know who the captain was at first sight?
There's a fact that I put in there specifically for this purpose. Kind of. There's a fact. How do you know? How do you know he doesn't know that it's virtually inevitable he's going to get hurt?
He's
Because
never
he's never
been on a
been
boat
fishing
before?
That's an important point. If you've never been on a boat before, can you know what's going to happen? Can you know how important it is? Maybe they drive themselves. Maybe we don't need a sober thing, right? So yeah, you'll never get because of that. But you do get to contributory negligence. That's a specific, because we're dealing with negligence. That is one you could argue. What's the test for it?
Plaintiff, an idiot too.
Was he stupid too? Was he stupid too?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got on a boat with someone who was drunk. That's kind of dumb. Knowing that she was drunk, he got on the boat. That's stupid. Therefore, they've met. And therefore, you would say, so in this case, the result would be that he would win, or he would lose, right? Because one of the elements there. But if the thing was proved, then damages would be reduced. Show your knowledge, right? What would happen? So there are a couple things that we can go back, because now that we end up with a dead end here, we can go back and say, okay, well, is there a choice that he could successfully sue for negligence for? Go ahead.
Did you go over the time?
Contributory negligence?
Yeah, please.
Well, here's how your brain has to work, okay? Ready? So, I would first of all deal with the specific defenses. For negligence, there are two. What are they?
Contributory negligence.
And?
Voluntary.
So, contributory negligence, I think, can be proved here. It's a good answer. Voluntary assumption of risk, if you know, what's the test for that? He knew it was virtually certain that he was going to get hurt, and he fully assumed that risk. Are there facts to support that?
No.
There's nothing there. Okay, so I wouldn't even expect it. And then you would go back and you would deal with or at least bring your brain through the general defenses, right? So consent doesn't work for negligence, right? So negligence, even though it's a general defense, doesn't work. So we'll keep going. Is there a self-defense to this? Did she drive the boat drunk out of self-defense?
Arguably, yeah.
She did it out of self-defense?
There was a storm coming. She could have died. Tragedy.
That's why, but she left the port drunk, right? Self-defense? I had to drink because there was a storm coming and drive the boat? I don't think that's going to work. Defense of property.
I guess it fails for the same reason.
It would, if there is a timing issue here. So you got to understand something, folks. On an exam, there are primary issues, and there may be a few secondary little fiddly things. There generally isn't, because I try and keep things nice and clean on the exam. If you put down on the exam that at that time she had to drive the boat drunk to protect her property, I would probably accept that. I can see what you're doing, and it does. You've got the test right. That's key. And you can kind of make it fit. Okay? So if you put that there, I would say, yeah, maybe. Okay? It depends on the timing. I was thinking that leaving while she was drunk. But if we talk about at that time, it becomes a little bit different. Funny perspective on that. So that's a tiny bit arguable. Okay? So what's the next one?
Lawful authority.
Did she drive the boat drunk because the law says she can? No, right? I don't even want to see that if there's nothing there. What else?
Necessity.
Necessity. She had to drive the boat, and let's talk about leaving initially in the boat, okay? Like the whole idea of leaving the port drunk. Because if we talk about at the time, things do change a bit. Did she have to drive the boat drunk to prevent a greater harm?
No.
No. And what's the last one?
Time limit.
Time limit. If there's going to be a time limit issue, folks, there has to be dates. How long do you have to sue for torts? 2 years. So that takes us to there. Okay, have I answered your question? Do you see how you have to think? Okay, so there are other things that we could do here. Sir, can I have your name? The woman that asked the question there?
Krista?
Krista. Krista? Okay. So Krista, when we change this here, all of this stuff changes. Well, not all of it. Everything that I filled in before is still going to be there. But the stuff that we filled in here that is dealing with this does change. So if we deal with cast the rod while drunk, we have a different outcome. The reasonable person, position that foresee the thing, this changes, right? Cast drunk, someone could be harmed. Everyone knows that when you're drunk you need cognitive skills and motor skills, and that casting we'll put that there. Requires that. If you don't have the motor skills, the hook can go anywhere. Hooks are sharp, right? They can penetrate skin, they can cause injury, and if you can't control where it goes, and there are people nearby, it's foreseeable that somebody could get hurt when you cast drunk. That's the type of thing that I would expect you to put there. So, it's foreseeable that if you cast the rod drunk, someone could be harmed. You just proved foreseeability. What would a reasonable person have done given the risk? If people can get hurt by this, what would they have done?
Not done it.
That's it. That's a good, simple, effective, easy answer. What if she had to for some reason? There's a different way of looking at this. Not doing it is a good answer. What if she had to? What if she had to cast while drunk?
She could have kept a safe distance away from him.
Yes. So either one of those is fine, right? What would a reasonable person have done? Kept the same distance away, gone somewhere else where there's no one around because I'm drunk, or not done it at all. Both of them are fine. Okay? And her failure to do that means she failed to act reasonably. Was there harm?
Yes.
Harm means physical, emotional things. Here he got a fish hook in the leg. Right? And that's it for that action, right? That's really the only thing that happened from that action. So that would be physical harm. And if she had not cast the rod drunk, if that's the one you picked, or if you picked the other one, if she had gone a safe distance away and gotten away from people, would that fish hook have still ended up in his butt? If she hadn't done it, would it end up in his butt?
No.
If she'd gone somewhere safe, would it end up in his butt?
No.
So, her failing to act reasonably caused this harm.
So you wouldn't bother like going into saying that there was financial harm too, like because it was the infection that caused the leg to be amputated, and the fact that you didn't go see the doctor right away.
But not going to see the doctor, what is that, folks? Why is that there? What?
That's to show his choice.
What? Yeah, that's made to have you go to contributory negligence. Just stop for a minute. I just need to make an important point. In a fact situation when you're dealing with, here, on the exam, everything else, every fact is there for a reason. It's setting something up, it's dealing with this, it's taking you to, when you apply the test, there's your facts that you need. They're all there for a reason. If you understand your material, and you're going to see this again in contracts, it's going to be so important. You know why that's there. When you're reading through, when you know your material, you go, oh, Murray said there's going to be contributory negligence here. Right? There's going to be, because look, he was stupid too, and that's going to be the test, and we're going to need it, right? So when you really understand your stuff, it really helps you to go down the right road all of the time. And you have to know it so well that when you just read it, it goes bang. It almost explodes. It's so clear. Go ahead.
The last sentence of the story, Alex was the owner of the hotel that Bob stayed in. That was a fact I couldn't find a purpose for. How does that fit in?
Hold that for a minute. We're not there yet. I need to finish this one off. So casting the rod drunk, you would come to the conclusion that that caused the harm. You could go further to show the loss of leg, the infection, maybe the loss of the job. Depends, right? And so you'd say negligence is proved. Then you would go to defenses. And remember, don't deal with driving the boat drunk. Deal with this. Casting the rod drunk. Was he stupid too? Not as stupid.
He let a drunk boat captain try to teach him how to fish.
Is that stupid too?
Kind of dumb. Arguably dumb.
Yeah. It might not be as dumb as getting on that boat, right? Because you may not have expected her to, that's the old line, I drive better drunk than you do sober, right? I cast better drunk than you do sober, right? Maybe she thought, well, she's drunk, but she could probably still cast the rod. How stupid was he? Maybe a little bit. You would still probably deal with contributory negligence, and then you would go through the things, the same thing you did before, with this fact situation, with that choice, and come to the conclusion if any other defenses can reasonably be argued. So, can you argue Can she argue self-defense, that she had to cast it drunk? To defense of property, right? Necessity, I really needed a fish. You know, she's gonna have nothing.
So then on the exam, are we arguing for the plaintiff or the defendant? Or what
You are
is it?
being the judge
Okay.
who has these proven facts in front of you. And what would the outcome be? Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to stop for a second, and because I'm going to be erasing this, and we're going to be moving on, and we're going to deal with the rest of the case study, okay, including that question. I'm going to deal with that question now. Ready? Okay. Why is that there?
Is that occupier liability?
Did the hotel damage him at all?
No, there was no harm.
Where, again, this is an important, the question isn't so important as understanding how you need to think. Okay? So let's just say that I told you, and it's an arguable point. I mean, I'm not sure that you'd agree with me when you hear the answer, that was an important fact. Why would it be important? And this is how that translates to when you understand your material and kind of how open book exams work, okay? So, where in this course did we talk about that? Where that fact is triggering something. That's how you have to think. Where in the course is there something about that type of thing? Not that exact fact, but that type of thing. So what is the fact that we say? Say it again. Alex?
Alex was the owner of the hotel Bob stayed at.
Stop there. Did we talk about something that had to do with that somewhere in the course? Professional liability is that you're held to a higher standard if you're a professional. Is Alex a professional? And what's the standard and what's the tort?
The only thing I can think of is occupier's liability.
It isn't. Okay, so did I talk to you about the glove? Have I talked to you about the glove, folks?
No.
No? Okay. All right. When you are off track, it doesn't work. In other words, you try and make it fit, and the glove don't fit. When you hit it, everything should fall into place. It should fit. And you go, that's what it is. Right? And this is what open book exams are like. Can you spot what that fits? Once you spot the area, the rest is easy. But if you can't, your answer's going to be wrong. Even though it's got to be somewhere in front of you. Right? It's got to be there. It's got to be in the material. You've got everything. You brought the whole thing. You did 900 pages of notes and you got them all. They're there somewhere. But you don't know what the question is. Where did we talk about owners?
Did we talk about in the voluntary the assumption of risk? No?
That they're virtually certain that they knew? Hmm? So, stop for a minute. I'm seeing a lot of people that are turning to your notes and looking at this. That's because you do not know your material well enough. And, by the way, I see this exact same behavior in the exam. Because people don't know their material. Oh, I'm going to go look at that. Okay? You really need to get quite a bit higher than this. Did we talk about owners?
No, man.
Yeah, man.
What'd you say?